Yo, step into the darkness where shadows lurk, where every creak, moan leaves your mind berserk. In the heart of that night where feet take flight, horror grip, tiny, so no escaping its might. Haunted halls and with the echo with whispers untold, and chilling silence tales of our old from the deep of abyss where nightmares reside. I wave tale of terror, let your fear collide. Welcome to the realm where nightmares stream, in the land of horror where only the brave survives. I feel the shake down your spine, the chill in the air, in the kingdom darkness where we dare to share. Blood moon rise, casting shadows long, and the maze with fear where you don't belong. Eyes glow in the dark, watching every move, and this quest gained where nothing left to prove. Monsters under the bed, with ghosts in the mist, in the house of horrors with a soul kiss. The last mile is another intense one, about a runner who encounters something sinister on a desert trail.
Ooh, I love that one. The feeling of being in a familiar place, but completely vulnerable, is haunting.
It was a dark and stormy night when Jeremy, a food delivery driver, received an order on his app. The destination was a remote cabin deep in the woods, and the time was already approaching midnight. Great, a horror cliché, Jeremy muttered as he packed the thermal bag with a large pepperoni pizza, garlic knots, and a bottle of soda. Driving through torrential rain and howling winds, he felt his phone buzz. A text popped up. Doors unlocked. Please place the order inside. Cash on the table. Once he arrived, Jeremy found the cabin just as described, secluded, eerie, and completely dark. He hesitated, but the promise of a good tip outweighed his apprehension. He entered. The inside was just as dark as the outside, and the flicker of his phone's flashlight barely pierced the gloom. He placed the food on the table and noticed something odd. The cash was old, bearing dates from decades ago. Just then, he heard a whisper. "Thank you, Jeremy." Startled, he turned around to see nothing but darkness. Hurriedly, he walked back to his car, and as he turned the ignition, he received another order notification. The same address popped up. His app blinked with a message. "Forgot dessert. Mind fetching it for us, Jeremy?" Against his better judgment, he returned to the cabin with a cheesecake in hand. But this time, the door was locked. Confused, he knocked. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a chilling voice said, "We've been waiting for you, Jeremy. The main course was fine, but dessert is to die for." As Jeremy stepped back, his phone buzzed again, but it wasn't a new order. It was a news alert about a food delivery driver who went missing delivering to the very same address years ago. His name, Jeremy. Realizing he might become part of the cabin's dark history, Jeremy bolted, leaving the cheesecake at the doorstep. As he sped away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd left something far more important behind. The next day, the police found the cabin empty, except for the food and an old pile of cash. No trace of Jeremy, or anyone else, was ever found. To this day, locals swear they hear the hum of a car engine echoing through the woods late at night, forever delivering that final forgotten dessert.
And then there's a motel where guests start disappearing one by one.
That one's even more terrifying. The sense of isolation and uncertainty is just chilling.
Jake and Lisa, a young couple, wanted to explore the country and have some adventure. They had planned to drive from Texas to California, stopping at various places along the way. But things took a wrong turn when they got lost in the middle of nowhere on a dark and stormy night. They had followed the GPS directions, but somehow they ended up on a dirt road that led them to a deserted town. The town looked like it had been abandoned for decades, with boarded-up windows, rusty signs, and overgrown weeds. There was no sign of life, except for a flickering neon sign that read motel. Jake and Lisa decided to check out the motel, hoping to find someone who could help them or at least a place to stay for the night. They parked their car in front of the motel and walked to the reception. The door was unlocked, but there was no one inside. The reception area was dusty and dimly lit, with a bell on the counter and a guest book on a table. Jake rang the bell, but no one came. "Hello, is anyone here?" he called out. There was no answer. He looked at the guest book and saw that the last entry was dated 1978. "Wow, this place is really old," he said. "Maybe we should just leave," Lisa suggested. "And go where?" "It's pouring outside, and we don't know where we are. Maybe there's a room we can use for the night." "Come on, let's look around." Jake grabbed a key from a rack behind the counter and led Lisa to the hallway. They tried a few doors, but they were all locked. Finally, they found one that opened. The room was small and shabby, with a double bed, a dresser, a TV, and a bathroom. It smelled musty and stale, but it was better than nothing. They put their bags on the bed and checked the bathroom. There was no hot water, but there was a towel and a bar of soap. They decided to freshen up a bit and then get some sleep. They were exhausted and hungry, but they hoped that things would be better in the morning. They took turns using the bathroom and then got into bed. They turned on the TV, but there was only static. They tried to find a radio station, but there was only white noise. They gave up and turned off the TV. They cuddled under the blanket and tried to relax. "Maybe this is all a bad dream," Lisa said. "Maybe. Or maybe it's a hidden camera prank show," Jake joked. They laughed nervously and kissed. They closed their eyes and hoped to fall asleep. But sleep did not come easily. They kept hearing strange noises outside their door, like footsteps, whispers, and knocks. They ignored them at first, thinking that it was just the wind or their imagination. But the noises got louder and more frequent, until they became impossible to ignore. "Did you hear that?" Lisa asked. "Yeah. It sounds like someone is walking in the hallway," Jake said. "Maybe it's the owner of the motel. Maybe he came back and saw our car. Then why doesn't he come in and say hello? I don't know. Maybe he's shy, or maybe he's angry that we took his room without permission." They got up and looked through the peephole. They saw a dark figure standing in front of their door. It was wearing a long coat and a hat, and it had a suitcase in its hand. It looked like a traveler, but there was something off about it. Its face was hidden by the shadows, and it did not move or make a sound. "Who is that?" Lisa whispered. "I don't know. Maybe we should ask." Jake opened the door slightly and said, "Hello, can we help you?" The figure did not respond. It just stood there, staring at them. "Hello," Jake repeated. The figure suddenly lunged at them, grabbing Jake by the throat and pushing him back into the room. Lisa screamed and tried to pull the figure off Jake, but it was too strong. It threw Lisa to the floor and slammed the door behind it. Lisa crawled to the bed and reached for the phone. She dialed 911, but there was no dial tone. She looked at the phone and saw that the cord was cut. She threw the phone away and looked for something else to use as a weapon. She saw a lamp on the dresser and grabbed it. She smashed it on the figure's head, hoping to knock it out. But the figure did not seem to feel any pain. It turned around and looked at Lisa with a twisted smile. It had no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a blank and bloody face. It laughed and said, "Welcome to the motel. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave." Lisa screamed and ran to the door. She tried to open it, but it was locked. She banged on the door and shouted for help, but no one came. She looked for a window, but there was none. She was trapped in the room with the figure, who was slowly approaching her. She backed away until she hit the wall. She had nowhere to go. She closed her eyes and prayed for a miracle. The next thing she knew, she was waking up in the car. She looked around and saw that it was morning. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Jake. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked. She hugged him and cried. She told him what had happened, how they had stayed at the motel, how they had been attacked by the figure, how she had escaped. He looked at her with a puzzled expression and said, "What are you talking about? We never stayed at the motel. We drove past it, but we decided to keep going. We found a gas station and asked for directions. They told us that the town was haunted, that the motel had burned down years ago, that no one ever goes there. We got back on the road and drove until we found a nice hotel. We checked in and slept there. Don't you remember?" She shook her head and said, "No, I don't. I remember everything else, but not that." "How is that possible?" He shrugged and said, "I don't know. Maybe you had a nightmare. Maybe you were sleepwalking. Maybe you were hallucinating. Maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. We're safe now. We're alive. We're together. That's all that matters." He kissed her and said, "Come on, let's go. We have a long way to go. Let's forget about this place and never come back." She nodded and said, "Okay, let's go." They got out of the car and packed their bags. They got back in the car and drove away. They did not look back. But as they left, Lisa didn't see the smile on Jake's face. She also did not notice a sign on the side of the road. It read, "Thank you for visiting the motel. We hope you enjoyed your stay. Please come again soon."
Hey Veronica, have you read The Midnight Killer? It's about a serial killer who strikes at the witching hour, and the tension is insane.
Yes, the way the story unfolds with each victim is so gripping. I was on the edge of my seat.
Max, a resident of small town in Texas, was a college student who worked at a gas station at late night. He needed the money to pay for his tuition and rent, so he didn't mind the long hours and the creepy customers. He usually worked alone, except for the occasional visit from his boss or a coworker. One night, he was doing his usual routine of cleaning the pumps, checking the inventory, and counting the cash. He noticed that there were no cars on the road and no customers in the store. It was unusually quiet and dark. He felt a chill run down his spine, but he shrugged it off as his imagination. He decided to take a break and watch some TV in the back room. He grabbed a soda from the fridge and turned on the small TV set. He flipped through the channels, looking for something interesting. He stopped at a news report about a series of mysterious disappearances in the area. The reporter said that the police had no leads or suspects, and that the victims were all young adults who worked at night. Max felt a surge of fear and curiosity. He wondered if he could be the next target. He looked at the clock and saw that it was almost midnight. He decided to finish his shift and get out of there as soon as possible. He turned off the TV and headed back to the front desk. As he walked through the store, he heard a loud thud from outside. He jumped and looked out the window. He saw a large black van parked at one of the pumps. He didn't see anyone inside or outside the van. He wondered who it belonged to and what they were doing there. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. He hoped that someone would answer quickly and send help. He waited for a few seconds, but there was no response. He checked his phone and saw that there was no signal. He cursed and threw his phone on the counter. He looked out the window again and saw that the van was still there, but now there was something else. A dark figure emerged from behind the van and walked towards the store. It was tall and thin, wearing a long black cloak and a hood that covered its face. It carried a large metal hook in its hand. Max felt a surge of panic and terror. He realized that this was the person who was behind the disappearances and that he was coming for him. He looked around for a weapon or an escape route, but he found none. The store was locked from the inside, and he had no keys. The only thing he had was a baseball bat under the counter. He grabbed the bat and held it tightly in his hands. He hoped that he could fight off the intruder or at least scare him away. He watched as the figure approached the door and tried to open it. It was locked, but it didn't stop him. He smashed the glass with his hook and reached inside to unlock it. Max swung his bat at him, hoping to hit him in the head or knock him down. But he missed, and instead hit his hook. The metal clanged against each other, creating a loud noise that echoed through the store. The figure pulled back his hook and swung it at Max's face. Max dodged it by inches, feeling the wind from its movement on his cheek. He swung his bat again, aiming for his chest or stomach. But he missed again and instead hit his cloak. The cloak, as he saw, fell off, revealing his face. Max gasped in horror what he looked like. He had no eyes, no nose, skin. He had nothing but no mouth, no ears, no hair, no bones. He was a skeleton with a hook. A skeleton with a hook that wanted to kill him. Max screamed, "Hear him," and as loud as he could, hoping that someone would come to his rescue. But no one did. No one ever did. The end.